All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Ole Miss After Dark. Going back-to-back days with you here on a Friday. Me and Hitch recorded with Chris Phillips from SEC Unfiltered yesterday. Y'all got that show out last night. Hopefully, y'all have watched that. If not, you can go back to the YouTube channel, find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Anywhere you get your podcast, you'll be able to find that. Chris was really good, really insightful. We did a broader look at the SEC after he got done talking about Ole Miss there in the first segment. And today we are giving y'all exactly what y'all want. This is going to be 100% Ole Miss the entire time. And to do that, we got our buddy Zach Moreth to come back for a second appearance on the show. Zach's been out watching fall camp, seeing the practices. A lot of great write-ups by Zach and all of the people over at the Rebel Walk. If y'all haven't checked them out, go over there. A lot of really good articles of what's going on so far in practice. But Zach, I appreciate you joining us once again.
Yeah, guys, I'm really appreciative to be on, and I'm looking forward to talking about some Ole Miss football.
Yeah. You've been a pretty busy guy here lately, right? With all the practices. I saw you
Yeah.
on Steven's show earlier, and
Uh-huh.
then I think you did one with Trent Browning too, if
Yep.
I'm not mistaken. I think I saw that too. So Zach's making his rounds over here, guys. This is kind of the Ole Miss version of the ESPN car wash, right? You're just going show to show to show and just giving
Exactly.
everybody your opinions, right? So
That's what we do.
really cool of you to do it though. So we really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun. Look, the first thing I want to dive into here, it's the thing that I've talked about so far this offseason I'm most interested in. What have you seen so far, not just from the defensive line, but the offensive line too? Because I think the two lines of scrimmage is what's going to end up making or breaking this Ole Miss season coming up. Because I think those are two really important positions.
You're exactly right. It's going to make or break the season, especially what goes on in the trenches. And I think it's very important just to start with the fact that right now it seems like the defensive line is in a spot where if Ole Miss played tomorrow, they have their guys, they have their starters. It's probably going to be Princely coming off one edge, Jared Ivey off the other, JJ Pegues and Walter Nolan in the middle. In terms of the offensive line, no one really knows kind of what's going on right now. We've seen Jaquan Scott playing a lot of center, but we know Caleb Bourne started all of center at center all of last year, and he did a fantastic job. We saw Jaden Williams. That's a name some of you guys probably forgot about. We saw him playing some left tackle the other day. The two guys who appear to kind of be set in stone right now are those two Washington players, Julius Bilo and Nate Kalepo. We'll probably expect them at left and right guard. But and right tackle, I'd probably is going to Micah Pettis. Yeah. But that left tackle spot, we'd expect it to be Diego Pounds. But again, nothing set in stone. And then the center position is going to be really interesting for me. But two different groups who are in a completely different position, guys. I think that's super interesting. And then one thing I will say is Lane talked about it on Monday, but the defensive line kind of seemed to take over in that scrimmage last Saturday. And again, I'm not surprised. They're much more set in stone, much more. It seems like they've known their roles for a long time. When on the offensive line, they're still trying to figure out, who's starting. So I understand it, but from what I hear, both groups are going to be really good and well improved from last season.
That's interesting, because when you think about the defensive line versus the offensive line and how they're gelling, and you said it that the defensive line kind of overtook the offensive line in that scrimmage last week. It kind of makes sense when you think about it, though. That the defensive line would be more ready, because if the defensive line, right, if all else fails, right, go after the quarterback. Like the offensive side has so many more formations and assignments and different things that they have to think about. So that's going to take a little more time, right? But on the defensive side, it's even if I forget my assignment, chase the ball, right? Like, I've got an assignment. Go get the ball. That's a good point too. You were talking there, and I don't think I've ever thought about this. When you go to a practice, like, what are you doing? What are you looking for? Like, what are you seeing? Like, what are you taking notes on? And like, is there something that specific that you're looking for as far as like, yeah, I'm going to write this down because that's noteworthy?
Yeah, that's a great question, Hitch. And because a lot of the stuff we really are just watching, positional drills. But for me, it's, trying to compare. It sounds bad because you never want to compare players like that, but you do want to see, who looks faster today. Like if is someone, let's say the wide receivers are doing a drill, who's catching it more consistently, who's getting more reps, because you can start to tell there's kind of a rotation and an order to things, whether it be guys on the first team, okay, first team's going here first, or guys on the second team. So you can start to get a feel, but it's very difficult with those offensive linemen because there's so many of them and they're constantly rotating. So I don't think we're going to get a final answer for them until August 31st, to be honest.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I was actually going to bring that up with the defensive line. Kind of like you said, it seems like we have a set four as far as starters go, right? But we're incredibly deep there. We have these freshmen with Eccles and Franklin and all of those guys. We've got a lot of guys behind them that can obviously play. Golding talked about Perkins. He's going to play linebacker, but more of a hybrid rush backer, outside edge, whatever that looks like. I think with the offensive line, it's so much more interesting, though. Diego Pounds, that's the one that really sticks out to me because I think he is so valuable all right, so Jaden Williams played as a true freshman, obviously. We all remember that 2 years ago. Played really well, right? We were all kind of bumfuzzled a little bit last year when he didn't get as much playing time as he didn't start as much. But I think Diego Pounds is that so important swing guy. He can play tackle. He can play the guard positions. He's a guy that can come in and give guys breathers. And I just wonder off the top of my head, obviously, nobody has this answer. You don't, we don't. Nobody will have it until we get further into the season to see what the rotation looks like. I wonder if maybe they're thinking that Diego Pounds can take over that swing position and start giving guys breathers at guard, giving guys breathers at tackle, to the point to where when you look at snap counts every game, Diego Pounds may be in the, top 3 snap counts as far as offensive linemen without a for sure set position because of how versatile he can be. That's kind of where I'm at with Diego and maybe what their thought process is with him as well.
That's a great point, Dids, and I like that because, again, the big thing is having a rotation so these guys can get a breather. And I think that's exactly what Ole Miss has, especially compared to years past. In years past, last year, we saw it directly in that Georgia game. A couple guys get injured and the whole plan, the whole game seemed to just fall apart. This year, okay, a guard gets injured. Like you said, maybe Pounds can rotate in. Maybe Eli Acker, Jeremy James, Bryson Sanders. There's all these names that you just didn't have that last year. You didn't have the opportunity to do that. And it's what makes this group unique and special, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's what makes
Scott's
this team
kind of the same mold, too.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I think it's what makes this team more special or more believable as a contender than previous Ole Miss teams that we've been high on is because you see it with Alabama, you see it with Georgia, you see it with all of these great teams. If those guys that start, right, if they need a breather and the second team comes in, there's not a drop in production,
right?
And Ole Miss hasn't ever had that. Right, we've had some really good players as starters, right? But when the second team comes in, there may be some loss of production, and I think that's what I'm like. That's what I keep telling myself about this team, right? Because as an Ole Miss fan, you're like, don't get your hopes up too high, right? Like you don't, because we've had some high expectations before, but this time feels different, and I think that's part of it is because it feels like, well, if we have to run the second team out there's not a drop in production because we are so deep.
That's exactly it, Hitch, and that's why. I've kind of had that mindset, when I'm watching practice, I'm trying to find little things, what looks bad, what looks like it needs working on. But just between the options and the talent they've I've never seen an Ole Miss team this good, in a long, long time. So it's just so exciting.
Yeah. And so kind of like what we're talking about with the offensive line and the defensive line, we have all of these options, all of these people we can rotate in and out. And great point by Hitch. It's what Ole Miss has lacked. We've never lacked top end talent, elite talent in the starting positions at least, right? It's the depth. It's being able to last an entire season, keeping guys fresh through 4 quarters, particularly on that offensive line. That's the one thing I'm really going to keep my eye on when the season starts, we've got those 4 games against Furman, Wake, Middle Tennessee State, and Georgia Southern. Really interested to see the offensive line rotations. I think it's really important Jaden Williams can handle left tackle, keep Pounds in that swing position where he can play multiple positions, and then Scott there at center as well. That we really struggled last year when Caleb Warren went out of the game, snapping the ball, getting good snaps that threw off timing and everything else. And in this offense, that's everything, right? So if Scott can handle that, be that backup center, because I fully expect Warren to be the starter when the season rolls around. But also, he was an all-conference offensive lineman at tackle as well too. So this is a guy that can play multiple positions, and they're just getting him acclimated. It seems like just from afar. I'm not there. I'm not watching it, but from everything I read, what I'm hearing, that kind of feels like what that's looking like for Scott. And then we're going to go to the other side of the ball, defensive line, right? Cam Franklin, Will Eccles. Have you seen a lot of Eccles out of practice? That's kind of a fan favorite of the 2 guys on the show right here between me and Hitch. We love us some Will Eccles.
Yeah, I'm going to feed right into that for you guys. I was watching the defensive line group, and I saw Will, and I was like, who the hell is that kid? Because he does not look like a freshman. He's a big boy. I'll say that. Yeah. I fully expect
and he's quick.
Yeah, he just looks the part. He plays the part. I think it's going to be in no time he'll be in that rotation, and he's going to play a pretty crucial role.
Yeah. He has a real Parade Jerry feel for me, right? A guy that has the look, has the build, is really strong. But I think what's really going to separate him and get him into that rotation and get him on the field is that first step of his. He has really quick feet. He knows how to use his hands and get off of blocks. And when he gets there with a real bad attitude too. So Will is a guy that we're really excited about here. So
as
really
you should be.
to get that started. So kind of jumping into the next subject here, of all of the practices you've seen, is there anybody out there that has really caught your eye? Obviously we've got Trey Harris, Jackson Dart, Bliss Bentley, all of these great players, pre-scoring, but maybe somebody you weren't really expecting that has kind of caught your eye throughout practices so far in camp.
Yeah, I got a couple guys here, but the first 2 who I want to highlight are sophomores, Caden Lee and Aiden Williams. They're out there every day. They always in a red jersey, meaning they're healthy majority of the time, and they just look different, man. I don't know. Their route running, their speed, their size, everything has gotten so much better compared to their freshman year. And Aiden was talking to the media today. He told us how he's finally starting able to recognize coverages. And it's just music to my ears, because I was actually on Steven's show the other day, and we were talking about when we played Alabama last year and Trey Harris went out, the passing game went out the window. There was nothing, no offensive production. But this year, I don't think it matters who gets hurt, because of the depth and the guys like Aiden Williams and Caden Lee, true sophomores who can come off the bench and produce immediately. I'm high on them.
Yeah, those 2 guys, and just tying that back to that depth conversation that we were just having, as y'all were talking, I had a thought about how deep we are in the different positions, and wide receiver being one of those positions, right? Tell me another school wide receiver group or whatever that would be more, I don't know, blasé about Deion Smith coming onto campus. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm not saying it's not a big deal, but it doesn't feel like anybody is like, oh my God, we have to get him here or we're not going to be any good, right? Name another wide receiver group that would be true for. And again, it just goes to the depth, and it should give us as Ole Miss fans just that much more appreciation for what Lane has done in the portal. Yeah. And so that I was thinking about that, and I was like, man, that is crazy that we are not going crazy, that the number 1 JUCO player in the country isn't practice. Like, why are we not ringing bells about it? And I'm sure that we are, but not as loudly as I think we would be if this wide receiving group weren't filled with guys like Caden Lee and Aiden Williams underneath, your other guys like Trey Harris.
Yeah, and going off that point, Hitch, if this was last year, I think we'd be dying to get Deion Smith on the field.
Oh, yeah.
100%, man. And that takes me to my next player here, Micah Davis from Utah State, guys. He showed up this week. He looks great. Lane was talking about him in the press conference. He can play inside. He can play out. Obviously, he probably will be on special teams. He had some really good stats, 28 punt returns for 250 yards, 6 kickoff returns for 83 yards, and another guy who can, let him take the punt returns instead of your guy, Jordan Watkins, who's, he's battled injuries in the past. He's explosive and another key rotational piece, and another reason why we should not be concerned if this Deion Smith situation falls through, which it shouldn't. It should be okay. But again, it just it goes to the depth, and it's incredible what Ole Miss has done.
Yeah. I think we're going to end up being okay with Deion Smith. Kind of the hitches point and everything. I mean, there were years where getting Deion Smith in a jersey, practicing in camp would be the number one priority for that Ole Miss team. But this team has so much depth. I'm glad you brought up Davis too, because I think he's such a huge piece. Not only because of what you said, him being able to play inside, outside, that gives you more depth, right? You keep talking about depth. That's what you got to do to win championships. But it keeps Jordan Watkins from returning punts. And I think that's the biggest thing there. You remember last year when Watkins hurt his hand, he was still back there having to return punts.
Like a broken hand.
We didn't trust anybody else to do it, right? With a broken hand. And he's still back there doing it for us. That takes a lot off of his shoulders. With Harris and Juice Wells and, like you said, Lee Williams, and then possibly Deion Smith takes a lot of pressure off of him from a wide receiver standpoint as well. I think Jordan's a great player. I think he's going to be even better when defenses have to start looking at potentially 3 other guys before they ever get to him. And then if you throw Caden Prescorn in the mix as well, that's another guy that you have to pay attention to before you get to Jordan Watkins. A guy that could have a sneaky dominant season for us just because of all the weapons that you have.
I think, Jordan Watkins, he is, like you said, he's sneaky, and I think he's really going to take on a whole new level this season. As crazy as it sounds, I think he's going to get a lot better.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up about Micah Davis and the special teams, because Diaz, you may have written it. I wrote it down, but I've since probably thrown it away. When we talked to Ken last week, he was talking about how Ole Miss has to get better at special teams, right? And thinking back to last year, like I could be making this up, but I swear I looked up and I don't think we returned a punt for it, like our punt return. We didn't have one return for a touchdown last year, and our yardage wasn't great, right? And so special teams doesn't get as much play as offense and defense, but I mean, it does set you up for those big offensive drives that we're going to need. And having a guy back there like Micah Davis is going to be big. It's special.
It's just special. And again, that if there was any hole to fill, that was it. And Lane still got it done. Like,
God, you just said it's so much more comprehensive and better. Like you said what I was trying to say, but God, so much better. I'm glad you're here, man.
Thanks, Hitch. I appreciate you guys, man.
Yeah. So that's going to be a big part, and a lot of that kind of like me and Zach were kind of talking back and forth a second ago was because you didn't have anybody besides Jordan Watkins, and then he had that broken hand too, so you weren't going to risk him getting hurt furthermore on the punt return, anything like that. Mike Davis, though, could be a huge part to this team. You don't want to give this Ole Miss offense any extra yardage from an offensive standpoint, right? You don't want to get them in any better position to score, any better field position. And with the additions of him and then the additions on this defense, you're going to be stopping offenses more and more further back on your side of the field, hopefully, maybe even creating more turnovers. I think that's going to be really important. One of the guys that I'm really excited about, and I wanted to get your take. I don't know if you've been able to see this battle in practice or not, but the first thing I thought about when I heard training camp, fall camp, whatever you want to call it, was, man, Trey Harris versus Trey Amos is going to be must watch if you're on the field and getting to see it, right? Two elite guys. Amos really came on for Alabama last year. I think he's going to end
Yeah.
up being our cornerback number one. And from everything I've seen, it's been him and Harris head to head every single practice, right? What's that been like? Have you been able to see any of those battles so far?
So unfortunately, we haven't been able to see a ton, but I
Yeah.
will give a lot of credit to the Ole Miss football social media team. You know, they've done a great job
Mhm.
videoing those like every time, and making sure we get to see those. But you know, it's really important to remember that Trey Amos was sitting behind Kool-Aid McKinstry and Terry and Arnold, two NFL players at
Mhm.
Alabama, and if they weren't there, he would be playing. Like it's that simple. So now you have a guy who's been able to learn from two NFL players who played under Nick Saban, and he's an Ole Miss
Not
Rebel.
bad.
He's going to be your cornerback one, and by the looks of it, he is competing hard with Trey Harris, which is
Mhm.
not easy to do. I mean, you go back and look at all those catches he made last year. He just makes a fool of seemingly every cornerback. But this has been great experience for Amos, and I'm excited because you're going to have to play LSU. You know, you're going to have to guard Kyron Lacey. You're going to have to play those Georgias. If you make it into the playoffs, Oregon, Evan Stewart, they have all these guys. So you need a lockdown cornerback. And honestly, I don't think Ole Miss has had a lockdown player like this in a very long time, guys.
Yeah, I'm fascinated with DBs. I guess I probably use that word way too much. But man, it has to be, and I'm sure there are other things more difficult than this, but like I put it right up there with hitting a round ball with a round bat as difficult a position, you know, to play, because the guy that he knows what he's going to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
I have to react to that, you know, and man, that's tough. And so you said it. We haven't had a lockdown corner in a long time, if any.
Quest Colson. That seems to be the last one.
And man, I'm ready to watch this defense play, because a lot of times, like, we have a dominant defensive line. We have in the past have had a dominant defensive line when you had guys like Ndici and all those guys on there. Then you have had dominant linebacking cores, and I'm not going to say dominant DBs, but we have had very good DBs. We've never had all three. We've never had all three lines of the defense be elite. And this year's going to be a lot of fun to watch this defense. I think as much pub as the offense gets, as people are ready to watch it, I think the defense is going to be just as fun to watch as a football fan.
Oh, absolutely. And again, you have to remember they've returned so many players and so many guys who are starting to really comprehend Pete Golding's defense, because it's not easy. Like the one thing we hear from all these guys in the interviews is how long it took for them to start picking up on Pete's defense. But in every position, you have a group of players who have experienced it, and you just have a really good amount of leadership for all those transfer guys who have played a ton of football. But yeah, it's just, you said it, Hitch. There's no other way to put it. I need the season here now, man.
Yeah. Let's see, my daughter, I picked her up from school yesterday, and she said the first junior high game here in Oxford is on the 27th. And I thought, man, I was like, the 27th, that was like, man, we got a long way to go from that. And then she said, it's just in 2 weeks. And I thought, oh, it isn't just 2 weeks, right? Yep. And then we got Saturday coming to third. I got all excited in the car, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. I'm really excited to see this defense, like I said, and it's not just Trey Amos back there. You've got Isaiah Hamilton coming in from Houston, right? That's another big time player that's really going to play a big role there in the secondary. Chris Graves here for his second year, right? Come over from Miami last year as a freshman. Played a little bit for us after he got eligible. Played a few games, but he's back again. Secondary setting up really nice. Before we get you out of here today, though, Zach, I'm really excited about this linebacker core. Okay, I mean it's been a while since you could talk about multiple game-changing linebackers in an Ole Miss uniform at the same time. And you look at guys, you got Suntarine Perkins, Pooh Paul, Reuben Collins, I think, is a guy that's going to play a big role on this defense too. Number one JUCO linebacker coming in, and then of course TJ Dodery. I'm pretty sure we talked about it when you were on the first time. He played in that Peach Bowl, really showed flashes for us. And him and Perkins seem to be the two guys that are getting most of the pub coming out of camp. But when you talk about those two with Pooh Paul, you've got yourself a really good core and a really good group there that can raise a little bit of hell, maybe clean up some things if the defensive line is as dominant as we think it's going to be, because that's what your linebackers are supposed to do, right? You want your defensive linemen to take care of the 5 offensive linemen, and you want your linebackers to clean up anything behind them from there, right? I think we're in a really good position with those guys at linebacker to do just that.
Exactly, Dids. And the two guys who I want to talk about who may fly under the radar a little bit are Raymond Collins and Kari Coleman. I think those are going to be two key outside linebackers, especially, it comes third down and Pete Golding wants 2 fast players to put together a blitz package. Those guys absolutely blow up the offensive line. They get to the quarterback quickly. They demolish the run game. And I'm just really excited to see how they piece together with this defensive line. And like you said, playing alongside guys like Pooh Paul and TJ Dudley and Perkins. And it's just all these names, man. It's tough to think
it's
just tough to think they can't go and win the whole thing,
I know, right? I know. That's absolutely how I feel about it too.
Yeah.
It's wild to know so many second team names.
I agree.
Yeah, it's second team, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be a lot of fun though. Yeah, I'm ready to get this thing started. August 31st, obviously. Not going to be long now. Zach, before we get you out of here, though, man, tell people where they can find your work, anything you want to plug. You can go to the Rebel Walk on Twitter or whatever. Follow you on Twitter and find your stuff. But is there anything you want to let people know how they can find your stuff a little easier?
Yeah, man, you guys can all go follow my Twitter. It's on the video here at Zach Moreth. Obviously, check out the Rebel Walk. And again, I really do thank you guys for having out. We got to keep this up and let's keep rolling it into the season, man.
man. Absolutely, man. We will.
It's a great conversation. Both times you've been on, it's been fun.
I appreciate it.
It's been a lot of fun. So,
and I've learned stuff too, which is awesome.
Yeah. That's the thing. That's It helps a lot when somebody's actually at practice watching it. They give a lot better perspective than me and Hitch sitting in our houses and reading articles and all. So, I pull yours up every time we see it. TJ Oxley from the Rebel Walk, I read his as well. He always does a really good job of naming players that stood out too. So, definitely go follow the Rebel Walk, Zach, and that entire staff does a really good job. So, y'all go check their stuff out. As always, we told y'all yesterday, best way to support our show, go to omafterdark.shopify.com. We have merchandise available, hats, shirts, sweatshirts, pajama pants, flip-flops, Papa Lynn's hot sauce made right here in Pontotoc, Mississippi. And if y'all go there, you can use the promo code SHIP, SHIP, free shipping. We take care of all the shipping for you at that point. You don't have to pay for any of it. So use that promo code SHIP and you'll get free shipping on anything that you buy. So we really appreciate y'all if y'all go there and help support our show that way. Zach, really appreciate you coming on once again. And like I said, we will absolutely do this again. We'll try to find us a regular recording day or something like that to get you in here every week, especially throughout football season, because it's going to be a fun ride, man. I can't wait to get started.
It's going to be great, man. Thank you guys again.
Yeah,
all right, thanks, buddy.